Sounds good. No.
Good. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, November the 24th. Call the meeting to order at 6:31. I noticed this clock is a couple of minutes behind, but I have 6:31. The deputy mayor sends regrets. He's out of the country on business today, so he won't be joining us. Before we begin, I would ask that if you're able, we all stand for the playing of the national anthem.
We've done sitting for a while this time.
Stand up.
Drinking warm water before.
Okay, good.
Good to know.
There, small public service announcement. Everybody drink your water.
Yeah.
We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories on which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions, and it is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources. Are there any disclosures of area interests? Okay. All right, minutes from our November 10th council meeting and the November 9th and 10th committee of adjustment, or sorry, December 9th, 2024, and November 10th, 2025 committee of adjustment.
It was confusing when I.
All of the minutes that were contained in the. Are there any discussion on those?
No discussion.
Okay, moved by Councillor Wagner to adopt, the seconder for that, Councillor Fegan, thank you. All right, all in favor? Carried. Okay, that takes us to public question period. So I know we're joined here with members of the public, which is great. This is an open public question period which relates to items on the agenda. We do have a section later on dealing specifically with the budget. So if you have questions about the budget, I would ask that you wait until that point in the agenda. But if you have a more general item related to something on the agenda, we can entertain that now.
How you doing? My name is Junior Brown. I'm a resident of Shelburne. And on the agenda, there is a section where I had some questions for. Here to just ask, last week, we had some questions last week, and I think you guys were saying that it was impossible. So now we have possible questions for you guys.
So the letter that you've submitted is included in our correspondence. We'll be dealing with that later on as well. Did you have additional questions?
Yeah,
no.
So the questions that I had submitted when I had submitted the questions at that time, it was for the meeting, the last meeting. And then what ended up happening, they told me that there was a way of doing it, and then there were some questions that were asked. So we don't wanna go over those questions again,
Sure.
to repeat what we did last week.
Yeah.
So we have more like straightforward questions. this
Okay.
week, right, and which one of them is, we did go around door to door to residents to talk to them about what we had, which is community center, an 8-lane track, and also imaging diagnostics and possibly a hospital. And also we did a lot of research as well, and we found out that the hospital was closed in 2012, and there was X-ray and ultrasound at the hospital at that time.
It was closed long before 2012.
Oh, it was? Okay.
The emergency department was closed.
Oh, the emergency department. So, okay, that's fine. So we do understand that we have to go to a different section of government to get that done. So what we're asking of you guys is if you guys can help us connect with Sylvia Jones. Because we did try to contact her office and we haven't gotten responses. I've sent a few emails, I've sent 3 emails, and I've only got a generic response back, right? So from what we're gathering here, we're hearing that when you are on council, with your title, being on council, especially with the mayor as well, that when they see that, they treat the email different, that's more as priority. So we're asking for your help. Yeah, we're asking for your help.
I'm sorry.
Well,
That's not a guarantee.
That's not a guarantee.
Yeah, to at least get in contact with her, so then that way we can push some of our concerns forward to her.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, and I have your email address, so I will be speaking to Sylvia in the not too distant future, so when I'm talking to her, I'll mention that. And then probably what's easier. I mean, if you have kind of a whole list of things, like this isn't really the time to go through, 15
Exactly,
different items.
exactly, and this is why we're trying to
Yeah.
get direct questions to you,
Yeah.
that you can actually help us with,
Yeah,
right?
so I think probably what's better than to do this at question period each and every meeting. Once I have an opportunity to speak with Sylvia, I'll touch base with you and we can maybe set up a meeting between you and I and whoever you're working with.
Yes,
And then we can go through that stuff together. If you want to come back to council at some point with like a larger presentation, that there's a delegation section that allows you to do that. But I think the first thing, your point is, you want to get some FaceTime or at least some direct communication with our member of provincial parliament.
yes,
And that's fair. I mean,
Yes.
you're a taxpayer, you're entitled to that.
yes.
So I'll try to facilitate that.
Also, December 6th. December 6th, are you most great?
That's what's right, yeah.
You'll be at, more than likely at the Santa Claus parade,
Okay,
perfect time to grab.
Yeah, talk to her. Yeah, so that's one of our questions, and also too, you wanna say something first? Okay, and also too, with the community center, we're asking if you guys can help us as well with that, with also with our research. We did actually, I wasn't even aware of that, there's a Dufferin County Council that you yourself, the mayor and the deputy mayor sit on, and you guys have like a voice there. So we're asking also if you guys can voice that Shelburne is in need of a community center. So a part that I didn't mention is that we got over 200 signatures. We went door to door and we spoke to people on like a personal basis, and a lot of people do want a community center. Because another thing that I found when we were doing the door to door, there's nothing to do technically in the winter. So what happens is I was speaking to a lady and she was saying that her mom is elderly, she can't skate, right? So it's great that we have a skating facility, but there's certain people that don't own skates, and there's some people that can't skate, and then there's the elderly that they just can't do it physically, right? So we need something for the winter, because there's days here where we're snowed out, right? Where you can't even go for a walk to get exercise. So that's another point that that was brought up, and we were asking for a community center. We know it's not gonna happen today, but we're asking for your help to help facilitate that. Also too, we know there's government grants, especially we did some research on Armosa. Yeah, and they have a facility there and it's generating income for the community. So we also had some ideas of, ways we can generate income for Shelburne and also have that facility there.
So one of the things in terms of outdoor recreation, one of the concrete steps that we've taken this year is we've hard surfaced most of the trail network throughout the community so that those can be maintained and cleared through the winter.
Yes.
I mean, we do actually have a fairly extensive trail network, but up until this year, they were, gravel or soft surface, so they weren't plowed, they weren't maintained over the course of the winter. And part of the intention, not only to make them more accessible in the summertime, but also it allows our crews to keep them cleared in the winter,
Yes.
to allow for walking. There's a trail being constructed right now at Fiddle Park, which, will help with that as well. So I mean, we are definitely mindful of creating other recreation opportunities for people outside of, just the traditional skating, ice hockey stuff. But again, I think the best thing moving forward and the best use of everybody's time is once I talk with Sylvia, then I'll reach out with you. We can set something up, the 3 or 4 of us together. We'll get a staff person involved too, and we can sit down and go through the research you've done and then, start to look at some games.
Kind of, I've worked with Denise in the past on the turf. I know you guys are very helpful.
Soccer club.
Yeah, and I use the trails at lunchtime every day. I walk the trails every day.
Now you can use
And
it
you guys
year
are doing
round.
great work, so I do appreciate what you guys are doing currently.
Perfect.
And the sidewalks also, I mean, I don't skate, I haven't skated in many years. And I don't have the ability to do that. But walking, the fact that they keep the sidewalks as fairly clean as they do, gives me the ability at least to walk the sidewalks, and I do it block 4 times a day, even in the winter. So with, there are some days you can't because of the difficulty.
Sorry,
but
no.
I might just add, for indoor winter activities, for seniors, the Dufferin County Community Support, which is run out of our Dufferin Oaks, has day programs. For seniors, yeah,
Okay.
so just in case, so you may want to connect with them, and they're in the door E of the Oaks. And Dufferin Oaks, and they have, like, they
Right
have,
back.
You're talking the Metalloy or deal,
yeah, well, they're in behind the middle way.
behind the Metalloy, they do dancing and whatnot there as
Okay.
well.
Then-
That's where the doctors are, but
Yeah,
that's a little
Try to get
further
in
on.
contact with as much people as possible to see what everyone wants.
There's catchy, there's yoga,
There's all kinds of things for seniors they do there.
Okay.
One thing, Mr. Mayor, as you said, we spoke to Kyle Seaback office. You understand? And they're saying with the community center and the school initiative, we have to go through you. Remember last time we was here and Mr. Walter?
Yeah,
You
I'll
were saying-
stop you there though.
Yeah,
First of all, Kyle Seaback's our federal member of parliament, has nothing to do with education.
it's not dedicated,
Community center.
community center. The community center is a sports complex.
Yeah, but you just referenced the school.
No, what I'm saying, the schools, what we're saying, I even get in touch with the Upper Grand School Board. Because I know the city alone cannot do that. We need a partnership with the school board and the city of Shelburne. Because everything we put on there and submit to you, we in need of the community, because the community is growing. Where are we gonna put these kids? Especially, where are they gonna go? Your overall master plan, it only have trail and that park. There's nothing in there reflect amongst the community. I understand when you guys were talking about it, there was enough voice from the community to come out and, I understand you guys send up, but the community just relax and never say anything and come forth. Now we are in the community and we see the need of the community. You gotta give a permit to another builder who building another 300 house. And now, where are those kids coming in? Where they gonna do? Where they gonna go? What kind of thing are you putting plan for them? So that is our job, is to make sure we have those things for when kids come. We can't be driving to Orangeville all the time, Caledon, Brampton. How are we gonna do? And so those are the things. The hospital is in a need. There's no developing community without a hospital. No, none. And we have to have that. We can't emergency drive 25 minutes on there. So every single thing we put down there and submit to you guys, that is that thing that you guys have to bring forth. And they sell it.
And
We have to-
again, not to repeat myself, I think the best use of everybody's time is to sit down and go through that stuff. The hospital, we spoke at length 2 weeks ago, that is strictly a provincial jurisdiction. So there, beyond advocacy, there is nothing we can do. But to your point, Junior, yeah, let's engage our member of provincial parliament, who also happens to be our provincial health minister. And our deputy premier. So, yes, there are things we can work together on. And to your point, sir, over the course of the last 6 years, there have been a tremendous increase in the number of amenities that we have provided. When I look back 6 years ago, we've increased our parks, we've increased our trails. We didn't have a splash pad. These were things that we had heard from the community that they wanted: dog park, community garden. Like these things don't just happen overnight out of nowhere. But the reality is, it's not just community wish lists. That there are realities and restraints in terms of resources. We're talking about our budget tonight. Funding is the most difficult one. Yes, there are grants available. We access those grants regularly. We have staff that are constantly applying for grant funds. But, without raising taxes 25-30% a year, we can't build anything overnight. So it takes a lot of coordination. It takes a lot of community engagement. It takes a lot of discussion and long-term planning to put those things in place over the long term.
Almost, I got it done.
And that's great.
And they got.
But you know what? I bet they didn't start planning it in a year.
They started in 2009. So.
I bet they started planning long before.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
This is why we're planning this now.
And that's great.
And basically, funding can come from Hermosa. It came from regional. It came from provincial. It came from that.
Yeah.
A third, and now it's totally generating revenue for the national.
And that's the point that the mayor is making. Meeting with the MP is one part of asking for grant funding. Meeting with the MP is another part of asking for grant funding. And then we can look at our budget, see if we have the remaining third. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter how many times we ask for grants, we have been refused. We know that because our sewage treatment plant, we've asked in the past, 3 times now? And 3 times we've been told no. So we know that it's not always the ask. Sometimes it's hard to get a yes.
Mr. Walter, all of those things gotta change. We gotta change it.
Well, I hope you can change it because we haven't been able
We
to.
need to change, because now we live in the community, and we're not gonna just sit back here and just leave the community like that. 'Cause as I tell you guys, I live here 13 years, man. Well, I'm not going anywhere. And kid is coming up in here, Mr. Walter, when you bring in all these builder and these manufacturers, this company, they gotta contribute to the community.
They do.
And they do.
They have to, and you gotta tell them, we talk to them, because we cannot call it various different level of government.
You can.
We can call them, but they said we have to go through you guys, and you guys we're gonna bring forth.
But so, I can clarify, so when we've reached out to different governments, so we do have a meeting with Kyle Seaback on December 17th. So, which is good, which is great. And we're also asking whoever's listening that they can join, they can reach out, if you guys can give them my contact, because the more people that are there, the better. He told me that I can extend it, his office. Well, what they're saying is, when it comes to the planning, the first step of the community center, it has to be through the municipality.
Well, we
So-
understand.
I'll use the splash pad as an example, because it's a great example of the community working together. So the splash pad is something that had been talked about for 15-20 years. And the reality was, it was something that was too expensive for the municipality to pay for entirely on its own. So Rotary Club decided to sort of take the lead on it. They came to council, they made a presentation and said, look, if we are able to raise X number of dollars, I forget the exact figures now, $350, will the town, provide the servicing and do all the extra work and then carry it on from there? Absolutely. So, those sorts of cohesive, symbiotic relationships, but they take an awful lot of planning. You know, they aren't just something to say, look, we need a community center, you know, let's apply for a couple of grants and next year we've got shovels in the ground. You know, something as small as a splash pad took how many years?
Budget was 750.
Yeah, our portion was still 750,000 for it. So my point is, I appreciate these efforts working together. That's exactly what has to happen because particularly, you know, in today's day and age, governments of any level just don't have the money to fund these things on their own. It takes partnerships,
Yes,
some from private sector, some from the community through fundraising initiatives.
yes.
But all of that stuff requires coordination and cooperation. So I'm glad to see you guys.
And I'm also glad that you're sitting
on
here willing
that.
to work with us and
Absolutely.
we can take it from there.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good thing. I think we've gone a step forward in the right direction.
Yeah, so like I said, Junior, I'll, I have your email address, if you gentlemen wanna send me emails as well, I mean, we all seem to kind of be working together, which is good.
The group of us working together, we have some more people, they are the same
good.
working together, because we mobilize in the community.
It takes a lot.
Let you know that.
Yeah. So
Because
we'll get something set up and then, we can sit down and actually go through some stuff.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect.
And while we're speaking, make a presentation to a service club like Rotary
Right.
and see if they'll partner as well.
Okay, but
And-
yeah, one of the gentlemen that we were working with, he works closely with the Rotary.
Good.
Okay, so that's good. So working with somebody like that helps out as well because they see not only you as taxpayers, but they also see a service club along with it, with the municipality working together. And that all helps, hopefully convince them to give us the grants and
Yeah.
stuff that we need, okay?
Okay, perfect.
Also, if you could reach out to Streams, because they had actually made a presentation a little while back with regards to an expansion to the CBRC.
Okay,
So they already had ideas, right,
Okay.
as to where it could go and what could happen. And then that at least maybe give you an idea as to, okay, we can do this expansion to the CDRC, then we can look into how much that's gonna cost.
and CRC stands for?
Research Center.
Okay, okay.
Right, so it's the arena,
Okay,
right? So their idea was to create that community hub
yes.
within the existing arena and do the addition. There's
Okay.
room there, there's.
Actually, people are talking about that as well. Why not just, instead of building something new, why not add on to what we have? But there's been a lot of things, and I think it's great. So, I think you guys are pointing us in the right direction as well.
Willing to look at that and see if that's
You
okay.
can take that hill rocks out of there.
Because a new facility, could potentially $89 million, right?
Yeah.
More, right?
70
So,
mil.
and the land for it as well,
You
right?
gotta buy the
So
land.
we just have to remember, our job here as council, it seems like we're telling you, no, or we're giving you excuses. It's information, it's reasons why we
Yes.
have to do what we have to do and we have to say what we say. Our job is to be responsible with your tax dollars. And when I looked at, say, an $89 million facility, that meant, when I broke it down, for us paying for it as a municipality, it was $34,000 per person. So if you're a 4-year-old, you owe $34,000 to cover this facility. So, again, it's not to say that it's impossible.
That's a full facility.
It's a massive facility, yes, with your tracks, with your basketball courts,
If we
with,
start smaller
everything.
scale and then build up, that's.
I was just kind of going off of what you had requested,
Like
basketball courts, tracks,
Yeah.
indoor
Most
things.
of cost 1.8.
But this council, we always say raising tax
Okay,
dollars.
we,
live
Yeah.
very
my point again,
And
like,
that's the
we
thing,
need to
we
set
don't
up a
wanna raise it
meeting,
too high.
we don't have like a half an hour to set aside every council meeting to go through this stuff, so
That's fair.
we'll set up a meeting, we'll go through that, and then if you guys wanna come back at some meeting and give a presentation,
That's fair. I think that's fair.
that's the best use of everybody's
Mr.
time.
Mayor, but you have to remember, Mr. Mayor, this is the only time we can get to talk to you and voice our opinion. These are things
But it's
that's very
not.
important.
No, it's not, I just said, we're gonna set something up.
Yeah, but we have to follow up, Mr. Mayor, and address and do this and come and see it. So half an hour, one meeting won't be bad if we express our feeling, because this is what the people. I've been going to these regular council meetings all over the place for years. The community have to come and express their thing to you guys.
Yeah.
You're the representation of
Yeah.
us, we vote you guys.
That's our job.
Yeah, you understand? And every other time we come and you scare us and say you gotta raise tax like this, every new community that develop, there's funding from the federal government and the provincial government to help those community grow. And that's a fact.
Yes,
And you guys know that.
we, as the mayor
So
suggested, we have done it.
It's a reason.
Please don't use that term, because that is not what I meant, and that's not what we do. We do not scare you with raising taxes. The reality and the fact is that if we cannot secure funding from other sources to help us, then it is on the taxpayer to pay for this. That's a fact. That's not a scare tactic. That's not a threat. That is just a fact that has to be stated. So you have to acknowledge that.
But I'm telling
That
you,
it is the residents of this town
you
that
can get
pay for
funding
the operation of
all
the town.
these. You don't have, right? But there's funding for these things. If we work together, as the council, as the mayor,
Yeah.
as the community,
Yes,
we can get these funded.
yes, and we
And
haven't spent
we
it,
all agree with
we
you. on that.
haven't. We all agree that, but we also have to just acknowledge the facts as well. That's all I'm saying.
So this is question period,
Okay. Yeah.
So-
not delegation.
So I'll be in touch with
Okay,
you.
perfect. I think this is good. I
yeah.
think we've gotten a step closer. Thank you so much for your
I
time.
have one question before we finish, Mr. Mayor. So our information and our question we submit to you. One of these meeting, you bring forth all of those questions that we can address it. Are you set up?
Sorry,
All the
So
questions.
with the submission of the
Yeah.
questions that we have, I don't know if anything is gonna be pulled.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is that if something can be pulled,
okay.
that would
So,
be
so
great.
what I would suggest is after we have a meeting, you can
Then
probably
we can-
scale that down,
Okay.
focus it a little more. And then if you wanna come back and actually set aside some time on the agenda to make a delegation or a presentation to council about what your vision is, then we can absolutely
Okay, that's fair.
accommodate that.
That's fair.
All right,
Okay, thank you so much.
thanks, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Any other general questions? No? Okay. All right, so we will move on then to our presentation section. We do have a presentation this evening from Headwaters Healthcare Center. Kim Delahunt. Hi, Kim, how are you?
I'm well. How are you all?
Good, good.
Good. Well, thank you for having me, Mayor Mills and Council. I know my slides are in your package. I am just going to share my screen and go through a couple of them really quickly, if that's okay. And I'll go presentation mode. So I wanted to just provide this evening some updates about some of our big accomplishments from the last fiscal year, and then really spend a couple of minutes on what the hospital is focusing on this year and into the future. You guys have heard me talk about our strategic plan before. I do want to pause on probably two of our biggest accomplishments last year. The one on the left was our grand reopening of our updated and expanded dialysis unit. So that's the photo on the left. And then on the right, of course, is the new MRI at Headwaters. So really big accomplishments. Just to pause on the MRIs, I know everyone's been anxiously awaiting this for many, many years. It is fully running. We're paid or funded for 16 hours a day. So we've spread those hours, that's like funded 5 days a week, but we spread the hours across 7 days a week at Headwaters. So there's morning appointments, afternoon, evening, weekend, and we will be completing 8,000 scans a year. Which is very exciting because our data showed us that there were about 4,000 residents across Dufferin-Caledon that previously had to leave our area to go have MRIs done somewhere else. So we'll be able to serve our own catchment area and also some other patients in need from other areas. So that's very exciting. We've got our clinical priority plan, which I know I've talked to you about before. So I just want to pause on a couple of the bigger outcomes from the last year that we accomplished. I'm going to start at the bottom, actually bottom right, and go backwards because we're really pleased about our patient experience framework that was refreshed. And I'm really happy to say that our patient and family advisory partnership is what we call it, is up to over 18 PFAP members. And we have a PFAP member aligned with each of our departments in the hospital, actually. So they're giving input, they're attending those team meetings and providing input to those departments, which is really exciting. We really value patient and family feedback and input. Our partnerships, so we're always looking at expanding partnerships, and the hospital has a program called Telecheck, and Telecheck recently partnered with Polycultural Immigrant Services to be able to provide services. They do wellness calls to seniors in their homes in a number of languages now, which is excellent. Our wait times at the hospital, we've been focusing on those since the pandemic finished. Happy to say that we've got some of the shortest surgical wait times in the province that we're very proud of. Our emergency department, we continue to focus on our metrics, decreasing our wait times. You heard me talk about last time our ED wait time clock. And then of course, I'll talk a bit later about our ED expansion that has been approved by the ministry, which we're very happy about. And then lastly, another partnership. We're happy that we partnered with the town of Orangeville to move our cardiac wellness program into the Alder Community Center. So again, partnerships are so important to everything that we do. I just wanted to spend a minute just to highlight for all of you. I'm sure you're aware, but just, you know, provincially in Ontario, the aging population is, you know, rapidly growing. It's already putting a lot of strain on the healthcare system. It's only going to do that even more. You can see the stats there about, you know, more than 3.1 million Ontarians by 2040 will be living with one or more chronic illnesses. You know, healthcare needs are becoming more complex. Individuals are becoming more intelligent with the internet. AI is playing a big factor now. And of course, I'm sure you've heard about the financial pressures that the healthcare system, not just hospitals, are facing, and that Ontario actually receives some of the lowest amount of funding for healthcare when it's looked at across the provinces and across Canada. So, you know, I'm happy to say, and I'll go to the next slide, that at Headwaters, we remain fiscally prudent, always looking for efficiencies. I am happy to say that for this fiscal year, we are one of the few hospitals that's forecasting to be balanced. There's a number, the majority that are facing large deficits. We continue to look for efficiencies each and every year. It is getting harder and harder, but we're really pleased with the work we've done. We do a lot of benchmarking on an ongoing basis. And so what we're really focused on is the growth and expansion. I heard the question period obviously before this, and I know I usually get asked always when I delegate here in Shelburne about expanded healthcare services. So the hospital has completed a master program and plan, which maps out the growth that needs to occur at Headwaters over the next 20 years to support the growth and the aging population. What it entails, and you can see some of the numbers there, we're going to double the hospital size. The hospital needs to double over the next 20 years with the projected forecasts of population growth and aging and influx. Our emergency department, as I said, has been approved to expand in the short term. So that's underway. Shovels will be in the ground, even though it's inside the hospital. But next year, that's a short-term expansion, which is very exciting. And then, of course, we're planning for the longer term growth that needs to happen at the hospital. And just the bottom line there, you can see there is a very large price tag to this expansion that needs to happen at Headwaters. So you'll be hearing more, I'm sure, from us about that in the future, but definitely the expansion is needed. And then when we break it down, and we worked with consultants in this area who are experts in this field, and then of course with architects giving us 3 options and designs, because when you submit your proposal to the ministry, you've got to have a few options, but you can see the projected needs of what the hospital will look like and need in terms of beds and surgeries and AmCare visits and all that. So essentially, like, our inpatient beds will double, our dialysis stations will more than need to double. We are really advocating for mental health, short stay unit beds at Headwaters. It is a pressure. Our births are already increasing. So that stat, 880 from 2023, we are going to surpass 1,000 births this current fiscal year. July, August, and September, we set records at Headwaters with over 100 babies born in each of those months. So we're tracking to like 1,200 already. So that's an area that's really expanding fast. You can see our emergency department visits are going to double, AmCare and surgical cases. So that's our focus. And then just lastly, you know, we continue to always look for partnerships. Really happy about our partnership with the Toronto Metropolitan University School of Medicine. We do have students already in the hospital that are doing their rotation. So we're really hoping that that's a pipeline for us to recruit some new young physicians to work at the hospital in the community. It's not on the slide, but our Ontario Health Team also submitted a proposal for an expansion into primary care. So we're looking at hopefully getting some funding to attract some physicians locally to work in a salaried model. It's something that a lot of the new grads are really looking for. And then, of course, at the hospital, we're always looking for new technologies, innovations, always efficiencies. And certainly, as I said, we can't do it alone. Partnerships are really, really important to us. So I will stop sharing, and I am more than happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kim. Councillor Bernardo.
Just a quick question. When you're looking at partnerships and some of your expansion, even tonight, we've had questions from some of the public regarding X-ray and some of the other services here in this community itself. Is that something in the future of Headwaters, putting some of those services within the community for the citizens, the elderly and whatnot, so they're a little bit closer to Orangeville?
So not at this time. We're still looking at expanding the hospital where it's located because of the critical mass that surrounds it.
Is there opportunity for that at some point down the road?
Well, that's a good question. And I know you guys always ask me this. I mean, I think there's always opportunity. I don't know that it would be the hospital taking the lead on it. There's always opportunity with, I mean, the ministry has had calls for proposals recently, right? For independent health facilities in communities, for diagnostic imaging, surgical procedures, cataracts. They're actually funding new centers in the community to do various types of services. So there's been a call for applications. So, and I'm aware of a number of, I guess it's private organizations, private facilities who have been applying, but hospitals haven't been eligible for that, right?
Yeah, and that's fair, and I appreciate your honesty on that. So I mean, if we are looking at more localized services, you know, if it's diagnostic imaging or the like, you know, that likely is something to be driven through like a private.
Exactly, or some local physicians, or yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But I guess if I can follow water, I know the hospital won't take the lead, but sometimes we need the hospital as a partnership with us to assist in getting some of those services within the community. Even if the private enterprise goes ahead and makes the application without the hospital being there as a partner with them, they may get that request denied. Is that something that can be accomplished?
We're always open to partnering, right? So I think if there's ever interest and the hospital is engaged, we will certainly always look at how can we support, how can we help the communities that we serve, always.
Okay.
I just want to commend you and your team for adding the 2 dialysis stations and the MRI. That was a big win. So good on you.
Thank you.
As they say.
And I know, Kim, I'll echo Shardy's remarks. I mean, you guys have done some great work, and I know that you made a recent presentation to Dufferin County Council, and that's kind of where you direct the monetary asks, and I appreciate that. But from our council at the local level, is there any other support you need, like outside of funding support, just helping to get the word out or anything like that?
Well, certainly, please get the word out about the MRI and about all of our services, about our volunteer opportunities, but no, nothing else in particular at this point, Mayor Mills, but thank you for asking.
All right, anything else for Kim? Okay. Well, thanks so much. Keep up the good work. And we'll-
Thank you for having me. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, can I have a motion just to receive the presentation from Headwaters Healthcare? Moved by Councillor Sample, seconded by Councillor Gashardi. All in favor? Carried. All right, and we do have a proclamation for this evening as well for Giving Tuesday. Whereas Giving Tuesday is a national day of generosity taking place on Tuesday, December the 2nd, 2025. And whereas Giving Tuesday encourages residents to give as much as they can in whatever way they can to benefit our community. And whereas giving can take many forms, including making a donation, volunteering your time, giving food or other necessities, and helping your neighbors. And whereas local charities and nonprofits need our support to meet the increased needs and demand for services. And whereas the people of Shelburne have always joined together to serve the community and make a positive impact, now therefore, I, Mayor Wade Mills, on behalf of council, do hereby proclaim December the 2nd, Giving Tuesday in the town of Shelburne, and encourage all residents to give where you live this holiday season. And as we're heading into that holiday season, I know that there are a number of local charities, our food bank and hamper program in particular, that can probably use a little extra generosity from those who are able to give. So if you can, please do. Any council inquiries for tonight before we jump in? Councillor Gashardi and Councillor Wagner.
Okay, so I have two. First one, I've had a number of businesses concerned about the 3-hour parking limit. And we're taking advantage of that and parking in front of their businesses, tying up the spaces all day. So I'm just wondering about enforcement. If it could be
Business owners parking?
this is owners parking in front of their own retail and occupying spaces that could be used by other retailers.
Okay.
Customers. So it's
The bylaw.
Pass that along to
Pass that
our
along.
bylaw team.
Thank you. Through your worship, so parking enforcement takes place every day. That being said, if there are specific locations that are a problem, we would appreciate those that are reaching out to you, reach out to the town directly so that we can target locations. Like the Q3 bylaw staff report indicated, 44% of parking enforcement is proactive. So it's happening on a daily basis. Tickets are being issued. But with that, some know what that 3-hour time zone is. We should chop the tire. They move forward. That starts the quick minute, another 3 hours, right? If they're reaching out to you, we would appreciate it. Reach out.
I've directed them to fill out the form online. They say they have. So,
Thank you.
no problem. And my second one is just an update on the progress of the park.
Yes.
We're looking at a November completion date, and I don't think quite gonna get over the line.
Weather hasn't exactly been our friend.
No.
Denise, do you want to?
When you say the park is still fine.
Yes, for the park, sorry, yeah.
So, yeah, our original projection was we would be done around now or the end of this month. We didn't anticipate the almost 2 to 3 weeks of rain that we encountered. Then we had snow, and now we have mush. So what's happened is a lot of the functions that were the wrap up components due to the weather have been delayed. We did review, was there any ability to modify plan to do it an interim open and have all the components of it. The problem is because it's so integrated and intertwined, and because it is a project of the constructor and they have the risk, we have to make the decision that we have to recognize that the impediments of the weather, and we were going to shut the project down this year. We'll be tweaking a few things. So that means that it remains a construction zone probably till spring 2026. The areas that are not accessible to the public will be fenced, and we'll focus in on the key program that we were looking at for this winter 25-26 was actually the skating rink and the pavilion. We haven't completed the pavilion because the sections that were being removed and reinforced are still there. The bump out, which we call the half moon, has not been poured, so there's no skating capacity there, and you can't get to the seating area. So we will focus in on the 2 community rinks, one at Greenwood and one at KTH Park. We did review whether we would open a third rink, but we looked at our statistics from last year, and again, unfortunately due to weather, they still had limited. So we're gonna focus in on those two, and hopefully we get better weather this year. So we know how disappointing that is, because people could have, if the weather had cooperated, we expected that. You know, not only would the skating be in place, but weather permitting and a nice day, the playground would have been available as well as the walking area. So it's another delay, but we're excited about what will happen when we're there. It'll be a great park. So again, we are behind, but fairness, the weather did not cooperate.
Yeah, and Councilor Gucciardi and I had a tour of it.
October?
Yeah, early October, I think, and yeah, I mean, once we're there, we're finished. I mean, you know, I do think it is something that is going to be a huge boon for the community. The playground looks fantastic, and it wasn't even completed at that point. The amphitheater, walking trail, it's all going to be great stuff. The basketball court, so yeah, just need a little more time. Okay. Good, Councilor Wagner.
Perfect. Just a little question about the new garbage bins and recycling bins that are going to be coming to town. Do we have sort of any information, maybe town staff can speak on it with regards to options? There's been a lot of chatter on both sides. People love it, people hate it. Some are concerned about the size and storage and the curb appeal of the look. So if there's just any sort of initial information that we can pass along, that would be great.
Sure. So through the mayors, people may not be aware that the initiative to adjust this with provincial initiative, Circular Materials is the agency that will be responsible for the new administration of those larger bins. There have been a number of municipalities across Ontario that are expressing the same concerns on behalf of residents. So if, for example, you have storage limitations on your property, that these bins are too large. If you have mobility issues, potentially these bins are too large. For example, in Peel region, recently there was a coalition of mayors where they were able to have an engagement with Circular Materials, and as a result of that, they have seen size adjustments where there's going to be selection. In Dufferin County, this has come up. Mayor Post with the town of Orangeville has led some advocacy on behalf of this for the exact same reason. So we're waiting to hear what the outcome of that is, but we do appreciate that while some people love them, some people do not. And once we have a more, more information on what that advocacy is done, being led by Mayor Post, we'll report back on whether or not, for example, there will be similar to Peel and I think Simcoe as well. York, where there is actually a choice. And I think it's traditionally not just a 96 liter, whatever, I'm going to leaders.
The big one, Mr. Van.
There's usually 3 choices. So it's, and again, it's supposed to be based on, most people are saying it's a size issue, or their garage. And I think the joke is here that nobody puts anything in their garage, but there are no cars. So, but again, if you have an apartment or you have storage issues, or you only have a front porch, these obviously are a challenge. That's recognized. So we hope maybe by the next meeting, we can provide council with an update on what's happening with the Dufferin County.
Yeah, and I suspect this is something we'll talk about on Thursday at county council as well. I know county staff and a couple of my county council colleagues have been talking with news service provider to express some of the concerns that they're hearing. A lot of the concerns are also coming from rural municipalities where people have long laneways and areas. You know, we have the storage room, but I don't want to have to drag this thing, you know, half a kilometer out to the roadway. So those discussions are ongoing. From what I hear, you know, that they've been productive. I think, you know, they're listening to what they're trying to come up with some tweaks to
Excellent. Yeah, I think
address what the concerns are.
the key is just choice, right? Just having that option to maybe go with something a little smaller, and especially too, if you are a senior and you live either by yourself or with only one other person,
You don't need
you don't need something that big either, right? So I think that's a good thing that, you know, conversations are happening, so hopefully, you know, they're listening, like you said, and there'll be at least an option for choice at that point. Perfect, thank you so much. My second one is just really quick for Jim. There's just been some chatter again online with regards to the volunteer firefighter signs. I did mention that there are signs I do believe they're at the entrances to the town. Some people were saying that perhaps maybe some additional signs might be a good idea on William Street, for example, as that's a major road used for the volunteer firefighters. I know in the past we've done a sort of a blitz campaign on our signs and our social medias to sort of just remind newcomers to the town that we are volunteer firefighter based. So the green flashing lights do mean that they're on a call. So maybe if you could just speak a little bit about any kind of ideas for an additional signs or whatnot, that would be great.
Through your worship, yes, this has come up a number of times in the past. I've conferred with the former fire chief and recently again with our current fire chief. And just with sign pollution and being able to read the signs instead of additional signs, the fire chief said instead of coming out of one budget or the other, he gives better use to use the signboards that we do have, plus our advertisements in the local paper and that sort of thing, and attack it that way. It's the way they've done it in the past as well.
Yes, okay, perfect. So I guess just for town staff, maybe we can draw up something or use something that we already have and just kind of throw it out there and get it on the signs and do a social media blitz on our Instagram and Facebook. Just to sort of remind people again, and maybe it should be done, I don't know, twice a year, something like that, just because we do have new community members coming to the town that are coming from the city and they're not used to green flashing lights. So, you know, of course, it's every second counts, right? So if we can get people acknowledging that they are on call to slow down and move over so that they can safely pass, that would be great. So, thank you.
Sorry, because I didn't go on the back. When you're doing that messaging out, can you also message out on the fire hydrants to the new residents as well? The fact that we don't need them being snow filled with snow blower from their driveways to keep it clear for the same firefighters.
Through your worship, yes, we will put that up on social media and we'll rotate it in over here as well. So,
Excellent, thank you.
Any other requirements? Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the budget meeting. So the way we're going to do this, we'll have Carrie, who's our treasurer, give a budget presentation. And then we'll open it up for public questions. And then after that, if council have any further questions, we can address those at that time. Oh, and there's Mr. Selby. I was assuming you might be hiding out there.
Good evening, your worship.
Right. It's good to see you. Carrie, over to you.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Mills, council, members of the public, and anyone listening at home. Tonight, we're going to present the 2026 adopted budget summary. Just going to share my screen. So this budget timeline shows how we arrived at where we are tonight. On October the 27th, staff presented council a draft budget and a working discussion meeting took place. From October 28th through to November the 19th, something new occurred that never occurred in Shelburne before, and that was a result of strong mayor legislation, where once a budget is presented to council, it is considered the mayor's budget. And following that presentation, there is a council amendment period, and then there is also a mayoral veto period, followed by a council override period. So our council decided to shorten that legislation from 55 days to 23 days, which brought us to tonight. However, because of the veto period and the amendment period and such, with none of that taking place, the budget was actually deemed adopted on the end of day of November the 13th. So what we've done tonight is normally the budget schedule would have included us bringing the budget bylaw to council on December the 8th. We have included that in the agenda package for tonight. In the strong mayor legislation, the passing of a budget and the hosting of a public budget meeting is no longer a requirement. Council has chosen through the mayor's directive to staff to follow somewhat as normal of a budget schedule as we have in the past. So we are tonight presenting budget. Just to put things into context for the public and for taxpayers who may not follow council on a regular basis, budget night does not just start on October the 27th, as this slide deck may indicate. Council's laughing. They hear from me all year long. Budget season is all year. So in June of this year, council did actually pass a 10-year financial plan, which was the town's first ever long-term plan. They also adopted the 2025 changes to the asset management plan, which included setting levels of service, which is something that has also not been included in the asset management plan to date. And what that does is when you set capital or make capital decisions that have operating implications. So those had to be included in the 2025 update to the asset management plan. And being eligible for grant funding opportunities is one of the reasons why we have to keep those plans up to date. They are considered living documents. They change every day. So even after we've adopted this budget tonight, something different will happen tomorrow. Having a 10-year financial plan assists council with the annual budget process, and it may make it seem more seamless for us. But it also means that when a budget is presented to council, there are no surprises. So long story short, as I already said, budget season is not just tonight or October 27th or November 24th. It is all season long. So the amount to be raised by taxation this year is indicated on this slide, and what that number looks like is it's the town's total revenues minus the expenditures, or sorry, I've got that backwards. The total expenditures minus the revenues, and that difference is what is needed to be raised by taxation. In this budget, 1% of that levy represents $114,000. And we will go into more detail later in the slide deck on. So something else that happens in the budget process is that staff brings a report to council. It's called a budget framework report. And what this report does is set out where staff is looking to take the budget based on the long-term plan and the asset management plan. And gets council's approval on certain items so that when the budget is brought forward to council, they already know to expect to see these items in the budget. So this year we presented a budget framework report that included an overall tax rate increase not to exceed 5%. We included 2 new staff positions, one of a payroll and benefits coordinator and additional operations laborer. And we also estimated that we would need to use some of the savings from the OPP savings in order to keep that tax rate at 5%. So we don't have our OPP reconciliation yet for 2026. Province has promised that it will be released by or on November 30th. So this draft budget is based on an estimate of what we think the 2026 OPP savings will be. And what we've done is taken that savings as well as the estimated reconciliation credit, because the province is 2 years behind on reconciling their OPP expenditures for the year. So in any given year, you are either receiving a credit or an additional amount owing for the 2 years. So we have recommended that the difference be placed into the unrestricted reserve, which is what we did in 2025. We're proposing to do that again. And the reason for that is that we have other plans that maybe where we may be able to utilize those funds. And if we don't set them aside, they will be wrapped up in the operating surplus at the end of the year and not be able to be identified for a specific purpose for what council intends to use it for. We did utilize $341,000 in 2025 to keep the tax rate at 5%. And for 2026, that number looks like 517,000, which still leaves just over 1.5 million as indicated on this slide to be transferred to the reserve. Any difference in those numbers that is recognized once we have our reconciliation from the OPP will be, the reserve will be utilized to keep the tax rate at 5%. So this is the revenue comparison year over year, 25 to 26. Other than taxation, the majority of revenue is made up of grants and transfers from reserves and own source revenues. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Grant did increase by 58,500, and we are also pulling from the Tax Stabilization Reserve, which will include any recognized surplus from 2025. In accordance with the Municipal Act, municipalities are required to produce a balanced budget, so any surplus or deficit for 1 year must be carried forward to the next year. Unlike provincial and federal tax.
Glad you said it. I was just thinking it. I was like, I wanna say that so bad.
So this is a year over year expenditure comparison. And the explanation column gives a high level explanation to some of the key areas of why there may be an increase or decrease in that operating expenditure. So several boards of management contribute to the increase in the town's budget. And that's those of the fire department, the library, the arena, the MVCA, and those make up 27% of our total expenditures. And the figures in this chart include all of the new and existing transfers that were identified in the long-term financial plan and that are needed in order to continue to fund and the adopted asset management plan. Those transfers to reserves will also help us bridge the infrastructure gap. And there is strategic rationale to comparing budget to budget, and in a lot of cases, maintaining budget levels regardless of prior year actuals. In setting the levels of service, the desired outcome is forecasted. So deferring maintenance or postponing upgrades can compromise the long-term capital plan that council has already adopted. The actual column in a budget reflects unique circumstances, and quite often circumstances that are beyond our control. And an example of that for 2025 was the ice storm and the amount of snow that we received. So if you look at those budget lines in the 2025 actual, you will see they are highly over budget. But what that also means is that staff would have had to pivot, and perhaps you will see some under expenditures on some things because we knew that we were going to be over in other areas. So a line by line comparison in the budget to actual is short-sighted in that you need to look at the big picture. You need to look at total of the departments as a whole. And other areas where uncontrollable things like inflation, supply chain issues, planned hiring of staff that maybe we had a staff member in the budget starting in April, but they didn't start till August. You know, things like that, like I mentioned, the ice storm, repair maintenance. Sometimes a project is in the budget that includes a grant on it, but we apply for the grant and we don't get it. That means that project cannot proceed. So you'll see that line item is highly underspent because the project cannot proceed. It also means that that transfer from that reserve that we were going to pull to fund our share also did not happen. So reducing the budget in some areas can hinder growth and limit the organization's ability to capitalize on opportunities, such as grants that I just mentioned. Quite often grants require matching funds. So if we don't have our share set aside and we get the grant, we have to turn it down because we don't have the money to contribute. Budgeting based on past actuals can lead to shortfalls in future years. Some variances are driven by strategic deferrals, and that's where, for example, we issued an RFP this year for a makeup air unit, I believe, at the town hall. It came in over budget. So we didn't have that money in our reserve, so the RFP was not awarded. We've included that project in the 2026 budget at a higher cost. Sometimes finding our own funding source is just simply not available. Adjusting the budget downward based solely on past actuals risks underfunding key priorities that can impair the delivery of council's priorities, which are set at the beginning of each council term. And these priorities are listed in the long-term financial plan. And they are also listed on our website. And some of the priorities that align with this budget are responsible financial management through long-term planning, investing in critical infrastructure and services for the future, improving technology, and building responsible organizational capacity. And those are just to name a few. The homeowner impact on the based on the 2026 budget. It's similar to 2025's numbers. MPAC's assessment figures still reflect 2016, and therefore there is no changes made to the average home assessment. We have discussed during prior years that assessment growth would eventually slow to a stop, and this year is the year it has happened. This year's growth represents approximately 0.38%, which means that in order to keep the tax rate at 5%, the levy could only increase by 5.3 or 5.4% as shown on the slide. The 10-year financial plan spoke to responsible financial management and that it is not uncommon under normal circumstances for an operating surplus of 5% to be expected or even planned. And this allows a buffer for risk and uncertainty. And one of those situations would be our global pandemic, where we had to utilize funds in ways that definitely not planned by anyone. So balancing a long-term plan requires a commitment from the organization, and council has committed to that, the adoption of the long-term plan. And it's nearsighted to ensure that only a one-year cash budget is looked at, because it affects years going out, you know, the entire decade of what we have established with our asset management plan and how we need to fund it. Next slide is assessment comparisons, and these are just random comparisons from some of the neighborhoods around town of what their current existing assessment is and how those assessments change depending on whether you own a single family home or whether you own a townhouse, whether you're in a mature subdivision, a new subdivision. And again, these are MPAC's 2016 assessment figures. So it just gives a random snapshot of what the monthly and annual increase would be for various homes located in town. This is our draft organizational chart. It was included in the budget framework report that went to council, And it shows the two new positions, payroll benefits coordinator and the operator laborer. What this chart does not include are any employees that are employed by the library, the arena, or the fire department. And those budgets and staff members, even though they are predominantly paid by the town of Shelburne's contribution, those costs are made up in their own respective budgets. So where does your tax dollar go? This slide just gives a summary of out of a $1 coin where your pennies go. And in the operations section, this includes cemetery, storm, and waste management. In the other protective services, it includes crossing guards, bylaw enforcement, and conservation. Recreation and culture includes the town's share of the library, the CDRC, as well as heritage, local cultural grants, and Fiddle Park and town events. Planning and development includes the economic development and EIA levy. And then we have our police protection, which I've shown separately to indicate that the portion of which will be transferred to the reserves that represents the 2026 estimated savings for the. So in the in the adopted 2026 budget, there's just over $8 million identified in capital projects. Under Parks and Recreation, we have playgrounds for both Highland Village and Fieldgate subdivisions, as well as some surface enhancements to the tennis pickleball courts and fencing around Thunderfield at Greenwood Park. There is still some remaining work to be done at Fiddle Park, as we discussed earlier tonight, that were included in the 2025 budget, and those projects carry forward, although you will not see them as budgeted for in 2026 because they are being funded by development charges. The operations budget includes continued work on the shop expansion and cold storage. And in addition to the replacement equipment as identified in the asset management plan. One of those pieces of equipment is another snowplow. Actually, I think it's a replacement. Under the infrastructure, we have urbanized the urbanization of Pine Grove Avenue, and that has been listed as an upcoming budget item for quite some time. We are utilizing OCIF money and gas tax money to fund that $4 million project, along with an infrastructure loan of approximately $1.2 million. Future payments of that loan will be made through the Gallup Fund, which is the same way that we are currently paying down the Sister Street loan, which will be done in 2026. Yay. So I know. With any good long-term financial plan and strategy, the aim is to have enough money and funding raised to the setting aside of reserves and sourcing of grants, so that the tax base does not feel an increase due to capital projects. So relying on a tax-supported capital budget relying on a tax-supported budget is highly unaffordable to the taxpayer. So you will see in this this summary here, we have 1% coming from the tax base and 1% coming from water and sewer rates. Other than that, the majority of the budget is being paid for by development charges and reserves and grants and long-term debt. There is a grant in there. It does show 0%, but the grant is so small that it registered on percentage scale.
Grants have been hard to come by.
So these are our reserves for estimated for 2026, what we will see coming in and what we will see going out. Reserves are only utilized if a project proceeds as planned. So like I mentioned earlier, if we don't get a grant, or if
the RFP comes in too high and it's not awarded, that reserve money stays in that reserve fund, it is not transferred out. So if you were to look back at last year's presentation and look at how we estimated 2025 would end, it is not how you will see 2026 beginning, because we've made adjustments for whether or not those reserves were actually utilized. And these reserves also do not include funds that are in our development charge account or our gas tax. So traditionally, the water and wastewater budgets have been presented in conjunction with budget normally. With the introduction of strong mayor powers, it was deemed redundant by the new legislation to include the water and sewer budget with the mayor's budget, because essentially, due to the water and sewer rates being adopted by a bylaw, they are essentially already established. So this is a summary of a report that went to council on the last meeting, November 10th, and it indicates the increases in the base and metered rate for both water and wastewater. The CPI at the end of September was 2%, so the Aqua contract, which is for 10 years and expires in 2029, it has increased by 2%. So essentially, the pre-approved water and wastewater rate study is what, going forward, will determine what our water and sewer rate should be. We do have capital projects that are identified in the water and wastewater budget, and they total just over 2.5 million. It includes repainting of the exterior of the old water tower, as well as upgrades to well number 1, which is continued upgrades in conjunction with finishing up well 3. And we have also started the engineering for well 9, which is a new well in town. And we also have the continued wastewater pollution control plant, design and engineering costs, as well as fencing around the Highland Village Pump House, which council just assumed last meeting or maybe the meeting before. So those are our water and wastewater capital projects. They're all being funded from reserves. And this is the reserve in and out schedule. The water rates that were established in the water rate study include a component for transferring to reserves for the future. So we already have identified that 2.5 million will be going into reserves, but as you can see, if projects proceed as planned, we're taking 2.2 million out. As identified in the report to council, the town is still waiting to hear on 2 applications that have been applied for with respect to the water control plant. One of which was for rehabilitation of the existing plant, and one which was for the plant expansion. And we are supposed to hear word on those grants sometime this fall or. And this is just a summary of our infrastructure debt to date, and it does not include the 1.2 million planned loan for Pine Grove, but it does indicate that the sewage treatment plant and the Sister Street loans do end in 2026. So. And that is the end of the presentation. In addition to the policies and plans that I've already mentioned tonight, the asset management plan and the long-term plan, the town does also have many formally adopted policies, including an investment policy, a debt policy, reserve policy. We have a Parks and Recreation master plan and a community improvement plan, and these, along with the other plans, including the water rate study as well, are all available on the town's website. And if you haven't had an opportunity to review them, They are available for you to look at in more detail. Those are the plans and documents that we refer to on a daily basis, and those are the plans that helped form this budget.
Okay.
So thank you, and I will turn it.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so as I mentioned, and as Carrie sort of went through, the process has changed this year, but even though council is no longer required under legislation to have a public budget meeting, this council decided that it was still very much something that we wanted to do in the interest of being accountable and transparent to our ratepayers, so here we are. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to the floor. If you have questions about the budget, I just ask that you state your name and address for the record, and then go ahead and ask the question, and myself, or more likely Carrie, will provide the answers.
I did submit questions to.
Okay.
I don't know where it went, and I think it was, I don't know.
Cynthia?
That's me.
Okay, all right. Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Couple questions, I noted somewhere, and I mentioned a little bit about school growth. Right now, and that's sort of part of the reason why there's, some of that increase. What is that town doing to promote more growth? To the Shelburne Upper?
I'll tackle that one.
Okay.
So the slow growth that we've experienced over the last couple of years is really not an indication of a lack of interest in terms of developers. I mean, to the contrary, in fact, we have a list of developers sort of waiting in the queue. The biggest factor is the fact that we don't have sewage capacity at this point. So despite the fact that there are developers who own land who want to get applications in, we can't entertain those because we don't have the sewage capacity to give, and there's no point building homes if we can't flush toilets. So that's why the funding for the wastewater treatment plant is so critical, and that's why we've been hammering away at the province to say, look, you know, this has become an issue which is at a critical juncture now. It's not that we're close to capacity, we are at capacity. We can't allow for any more development. So those conversations are still ongoing. I am positive that we'll reach sort of the point that we need to be and get the funding that we need to get. But we're just not quite there yet to the point where, you know, we can start to entertain these applications. Once that's done, then, you know, as I say, we have a long list of developers, you know, sort of knocking at the door, ready to go. So this is not a problem that will be a long-term problem, I don't suspect. It's just something that for a couple of years until we, you know, get that funding secured and then get the plant built, you know, we're going to have to contend with.
In terms of commercial, is anything done to attract more businesses to Shelburne?
Yeah, and that's a good point, and that's something that both this council and the previous council highlighted in our strategic plans. You know, what we saw for a number of years was this tremendous residential growth, but we didn't really see, you know, the commercial growth or retail growth to coincide with that. Not only to service the growing population, but also to lessen the burden on residential taxpayers. Carrie, you probably know the number offhand. What percentage of our tax base is residential right now?
7%.
Okay. Which is not all that uncommon for small communities, but it just means that the homeowner bears the biggest brunt of the tax burden. So.
Which was what I was trying to explain to.
Yeah,
Jen.
exactly.
Not a threat.
So, you know, we have seen some steps in the right direction, I think, over the last number of years with some fairly significant commercial growth. I'd like to see more of it. And to your point, yeah, we're working to try to incorporate that stuff into development. But you know, there are restraints as well. There's land restraints. You know, we don't really have that much more developable land within the current urban boundaries of town.
We're successful in Emerald Crossing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The developer who purchased that land wanted it all houses.
And we as a council, I guess it was maybe the previous council, which would have been an addition, subtraction of a couple of people. We sat down with them and within our legal limits, we asked to, you know, please include some retail. So that was a win for us. Because they didn't want it. They wanted that whole section to be houses.
So that's the development for the new food land, Plaza McDonald's, and everything else. And what we had sort of discussed at that time, that was 2014 to 18 council. So Councillor Sample, Councillor Bernardo and I were there. We had a commitment from Fieldgate, who was the developer, to actually phase it so that phase one, what was done is the commercial section. So that's why that was built before the housing was built. And now we're seeing their phase two commercial nearing completion.
And then there should be another phase on the other side, which from what we know is saying a possible use. So we're not sure exactly how that will look yet, but there could be retail on the bottom and housing on top, medium density, but we're not sure yet because it hasn't really come to us. But that's another development as well that will eventually make its way to the table once we have the allocation to give.
It's not only up to council, though, it's up to commercial to come ahead from the people that want to bring commercial in town. If you will notice on the opposite side of Fieldgate that there's commercial now going where Feedstone that used to be. You're going to see 3 new commercial in there. There's commercial on the north end at Colonel Phillips, which we also advocated for. And then we have where the current No Frills is, that was supposed to be a filled out commercial all the way to where the lights are at the new development going into No Frills, Foodland. But again, we can't force them to do that. It has to be up to them to come forward and wanting to do that. So now you're going to see a new drug mart going in there. That they've been promising us for years, and they're finally going ahead putting that in. But again, they haven't committed to fully developing that whole section that they have commercial. That was established well before 2014, well before that they had that potential to develop that, and they haven't till this point. So again, we can't force them to do that.
I made the comment at the last meeting because I hear it regularly, you know, a new business will be announced and you know, the comment will be made, well, why are you putting that in? You know, why doesn't council open the Costco? It's like, well, it's not up to council to decide what opens. If somebody wants to open a particular business, you know, it's up to the business to do it.
And I think it comes hand in hand too. We need growth to support the businesses and, you know, they won't come, exactly, right?
There's a
So
bit
it's
of a
little
critical
bit of
mass there.
Yeah, so that's why, because we're sitting at now close to that 10,000 mark, we're finally seeing, you know, the Dollaramas and the pet values. I mean, we had a pet value before and it left, but don't go being there. You know, we're seeing those larger companies say, yeah, you know, Shelburne's a good place because there's a population to support it, right? Because at the end of the day, it's profits, right? They have to make a profit in order to be here. So we're getting there, and I'm excited that, you know, we are seeing some more of those things because I've been here 21 years. So it's nice to just be able to go to Dollarama over there and not have to drive all the way to Orangeville or Alliston. So you know, they are coming. It's just in time-ish.
Just before we move on to the next one, I'm just going to ask our CAO to quickly run through what our population projections are.
Yeah, sure. So through the municipal comprehensive review, which is the recent undertaking of the county, and our OP update, official plan update, and just to put it into context, I know we keep going, some people are calling it the city. The population projections to 2041 for the town of Shelburne, and I'm going to reemphasize it, 6.61 kilometers square. So that has a significant land constraint for any development growth, is 15,100. So that is not a significant size. Density on that acre, that hectare, those kilometers is intense. It's equivalent to Vaughan, and we brought that up with the truck EA bypass process. But I mean, there's a lot of things within that population growth over that level of time that are still gonna constrain the service capacity of this municipality. So once MPAC, if they ever adjust the 2016 rate, then there'll be exponential growth just on that assessment from the market check adjustment. But I mean, once we are built out in the absence of a boundary expansion or land expansion, we are done. So then we will flatline again, and this is something the treasurer and I have, I guess, emphasized for the last 8 years or more, is that, you know, there will be a tipping point where the sustainability of capital will have to be assessed. And then there has to be an acknowledgement of the willingness to pay, and predominantly to be tax base, because in the absence of those grants, and as staff, we are always saying, because we hear this constantly, that irrespective of what level of tax support is provided, whether municipal, county, provincial, or federal, there is one taxpayer. So collectively, they're still going to be funding that irrespective of what taxpayer is funding the project. So to say, well, the federal government or the province can pay for it, doesn't alleviate the burden on that level of taxation. So we are struggling sometimes to rationalize the growth that can fund the expectations, because there's an inequity and a disbalance. So, and I'll go back to the original comments we had this morning, and you used 86 million, which was actually the price of a multi-purpose recreational complex in another community with an indoor track and pool. And I guess what we have always recognized, that there's certain service level areas that are reliant upon community subsidy and taxpayer support. And I've never experienced in my career where recreation and parks makes money. They are traditionally the most heavily subsidized components of services, and rightfully so, because they are contributing to a quality of life and a standard. So I just wanted to qualify that, because, you know, we're not going to be a municipality, say, Paladin right now, their 2041 population projection is to go to 300,000. Now, granted, there are some components of their growth plan that are being objected to currently by residents that are worried about that level of growth. But Shelburne is constrained by the population projection because the land constraints will be. And I'll just, one more thing is, when we originally did the MCR, we were expected to go to 18.3. And we knew that in the absence of a land expansion, we could not support that. And there was a rejigging of the population projection, so that the growth that was originally the variance for Shelburne was allocated to Grand Valley. So if you look at the information from the county, you'll see where the growth is county-wide, and it's predominantly Orangeville, Shelburne, and Grand Valley, and some in Mulmer.
Well, the only way we could have accommodated growth to that level would have required intensity. You know, that just, you know, would have been objectionable to residents. I mean, it wouldn't have been keeping the character of the community, like, you know, 10, 12-story buildings is not something that, you know, we're going to accommodate. Some medium, you know, rise stuff, sure, you know, we're all going to have to look at that. But, you know, typically what we hear time and time again is people don't move to a small town like this with character like our community, you know, to only have it turn into, you know, a city that they moved away from. So there's a bit of a balancing act there.
And that's, you know, part of it as well, when you have to look at the visual number, you know, some people just might not be sort of understanding, like 2041, we're expecting 15,000, that's still half of what Orangeville is right now. Right, so we have to, we really have to acknowledge that fact. You know, we're 2025, so 2020, you know, 41 is quite a bit away, and yet we'll still be half the size of Orangeville right now.
I had another question that, I don't know if anyone saw the chart that I.
Yeah.
Okay. So I understand what you're saying is that you know, you can't rely on actual figures really going forward with budget. And that was sort of my main concern in developing this chart, because it seemed a little bit excessive in some of the areas. And I didn't include all the categories or all the areas that I thought were neat to looking at. The ones that I included in this chart, I thought were pretty reasonable and were expenses that would be pretty steady. So the difference between what was estimated in 2025, was 2,340,000, and for these categories, you're spending 3,943,000 in 2026, which is a difference of 1,600,000. which is a difference of, now, this one figure at the bottom of the chart is incorrect, it says 72%. So that's a 70% increase in all these categories, that seems a bit excessive to me. Categories that are pretty predictable and don't really involve a lot of capital or anything along that line. One of the figures, which is a new figure, and I put it in here because I don't know what it is, and it seems like a very large amount for community harvest initiative. What is that?
Yeah, to that. So it's part of a grant which we applied for and came before council, and it was the Alliance for Food Insecurity. There is going to be a commissary kitchen at Fiddle Park in the concession area. So it's a $362,000 project. And through that, food bank and the economic development side of that project is where enabling businesses that are producers so that they have a certified kitchen to produce. That project is a grant.
So this expense $249,000.
It matches because there's a grant. And then there'll be partial revenues, which will be reflected in the rates and fees that will be coming forward to contribute towards the operating costs of that building.
Mhm.
And any money that's generated from those uses, like say $20 an hour, will go back into that kitchen. The Rotary supported this initiative through the last golf tournament, which is partnership, with $8,000, and we are buying the equipment with that money. So this is like sustainable project. So that's where there's not, if you don't see the corresponding money, that's actually the revenue to offset the expense, there may seem to be a disconnect.
Okay, so that would reduce to 70%. So let's say we'll bring it down to 60%. For these categories.
Without me going line by line and looking, I can't give you a detailed idea.
I think generally
Don't have time to review it.
the approach that we've taken, and one thing that a lot of residents aren't aware of is, Carrie mentioned this, as municipalities, we have to have a balanced budget. So unlike the province and the feds that have the luxury of running deficits indefinitely, we have to have a balanced budget. So one of the very first slides that Carrie presented showed how we arrive at that amount that's required to be raised by taxation. So we essentially take our expenses, our budgeted expenses, reduce that by other sources of revenue, and whatever that shortfall is, we have to make it up by tax. Like that's just the way it is under provincial legislation. The approach we've taken, and I think the approach that most responsible municipalities take is to budget on a fairly conservative basis and to cherry pick a few line items here and there. I get, it may look as though actuals versus budgeted, that there's quite a variance. Carrie's point though is you have to look at the entire municipal budget sort of as a whole from a big picture view, because in any of those areas or in other areas, year to year, there could be surprises, there could be unanticipated things that come up. The ice storm last year, the amount of salt and sand that was required last year, the amount of manpower, person power that was required last year to plow the streets, given the ridiculous amount of snow we had. All of those things are unforeseeable. So at the end of the day, yes, I think it's fair to say that we probably budget with a view to have a surplus at the end, at some point, because we never know what's going to crop up during the course of the year. And I would much rather be in a position where we do have a surplus that can then be added to reserve to pay for things down the road and plan for it than to be caught short.
And then I think the other thing you gotta add, what Gary, the CEO has mentioned, that some of these line items have grants or grant money written into them that you won't see necessarily. Okay, so they may not all be a tax base. The tax base is at the set amount that we take from the taxes. They could be coming from reserves and other places as well. That's not necessarily there unless you go through the big entire full budget and look at it from that point of view. And that's why Carrie's saying, without going line by line, going through everything, telling you where that money sources are coming from, it's very hard to explain why those variances are what they are. But a lot of it is coming from grants, reserve, Carrie, and a smaller portion, but we try to keep the smallest portion we can from the tax base.
I get it, but I really think that a lot of these items are not involving grants and things like that. We're talking $1.6 million, which is a lot of surplus.
How much surplus are we talking?
1.6.
Surplus? Gary, how much is the surplus?
Her chart is taking 2026 budgeted figures and comparing them to 2025's actuals. 2025 isn't over yet, so those are just estimated actuals.
Well, I would expect that estimated is very close.
We're hoping, so just looking at a couple of those line items, just off the cuff, example of bylaw labor. We had a part-time position contract for 2025 that didn't get hired when we thought the person would be hired. And so that salary is now in the 2026 budget for an entire year, because that person has started now. So where we end in 2025 is going to be much lower because they didn't start, I think it was supposed to be April, they were supposed to start, and they didn't start till September.
Might only be 6 months worth of pay for that.
Yeah. But for next year, it's all 12 months.
A lot higher.
Operations and fuel, we are purchasing some new vehicles this year. And we also did an analysis of where our fuel costs are going with respect to operations, parks and recreation, the cemetery, and bylaw, and the water department. So we have pumps installed at the public works yard where everyone has a card, and your card is based on your department. So we now have a full year of where our fuel is going. So within the budget, we realigned fuel to the correct departments. So there's a little bit of an increase you'll see in operations because of that realignment for 2026. Landfill monitoring, it's gone up 20,000 because we are doing every 3 years we're required to do reporting on our monitoring wells. And so once every 3 years, you'll see that spike 20,000. If you look at the 2027 budget in the outline columns, you'll see it drop again. 20. So it's just spiked for the 1 year. Parks labor is going up. We are hiring, I mentioned in the budget, new operations staff person. And part of that person's wages will be dedicated strictly to the Fiddle Park, because it is, as you know, going to be a more utilized park next year with, you know, a playground and tennis courts and kitchen, basketball.
Let's not start rumors.
Basketball courts. So we do have a new position in there for that, as well as realignment of other staff. And that is also why the parks benefits line has gone up. And that is also why the event line has gone up, because the town is planning to host events out at Fiddle Park once it's opened. The crossing guard, the benefits and the labor, we had, I believe, 6 extra crossing guards in the budget for 2025 to start busing children out in the Fieldgate subdivision. But we've been told that by the school board that they are going to continue to bus those kids. So we have included, that is why the 2025 budget is lower, because we did not spend that money. We have included it in 2026, starting in September, again, with the anticipation that we need those crossing guards. The growth studies, 52,000 is low because we have not
gotten far enough into our traffic TMP
And
and the HAMP traffic studies that we had thought we would in 2025. And those are funded from development charges. So if you were to look on the revenue side, it is completely offset by these.
No, you don't have to go through all.
Okay,
I appreciate that, and it's giving me an understanding of more how things work. But where does this $1.6 million go?
you're comparing budget to actual, and that is not how the
Yeah, but-
budget
but
municipalities.
It
So any
means that-
surplus that's recognized in 2025 carries over to the 2026 budget. And it's being transferred in through the tax stabilization reserve to help keep the tax rate at 5%.
And
we are
you'll know what the
So all that
final
extra-
2025 surplus is.
Yep.
in-
It's, the 2025 surplus is estimated to be. It's on page 9 of the budget document. We're estimating 475,000. So that's being transferred into the tax stabilization reserve. And being pulled into the 2026 budget on page. Page 5. Being pulled in to help keep the tax rate 5%.
Bill, can I please just make a comment? Deputy, I don't know exactly that, you talked about 5% increase, if you could get below 5% or at 5%. I moved to Shelburne 8 years ago and my taxes have gone up just shy of 35. It's 5% every year. And that's very difficult for seniors to try and live on fixed income and see these kind of increases. And then to look at your budget and see, well, does the bylaw officer really need a new vehicle this year, and does it have to be, whatever, a Ford, like, what it was, like, could they not be driving something economical, or not, please, we could be sharpening our pencils here to try and keep things a little more reasonable?
So I'll address the bylaw specifically.
That's just
Yeah,
one
no, sure,
Yeah.
and that's fine. But I think it's important to recognize that the decisions that are made are not just made, for the sake of making them, that there is rationale that goes behind it. One of the things that our bylaw officers oftentimes has to contend with is animal control. So they have to pick up a dog. So sure, on first blush, yeah, we could put a bylaw officer in a smart car because they're just running around writing parking tickets. That's not really the entirety of their job. So if they have to go and do some of this other stuff or move things off of the road, there are times where they require a larger vehicle that requires that space. One example. In terms of the general budget increase, one of the things I often say, at budget time is running a municipality really isn't all that different than running our household. And I think all of us can appreciate and agree with the fact that it costs more every year to run the same household. It's heating oil.
Well, absolutely, and I think we
right?
can all agree the times are tough right now.
Absolutely. So it costs us more to run the municipality than it did last year, right?
Yes, and I appreciate
Okay, so in order to provide the exact same level of service that we provided last year, we have to increase the budget. That's not accounting for any new services. You heard tonight, the list of wants and wishes that we get from the community are endless. And we have a balancing act to try to say, okay, on one hand, we're hearing from the community that they want X, Y, Z. On the other hand, we're hearing that people are having a hard time, and we all live here too. We pay the same taxes. We have to keep taxes at an affordable rate while still maintaining the level of service that people can come to expect. So that's the balancing act that we live with, throughout the year. As Carrie said, budget season is not just a 1 month process. The other thing I will point out, that there was a period of time, I'm going to say 10, 12 years ago, where it seemed to be in vogue that municipalities were trying to end up with a 0% tax increase year over year. And in my mind, and I will argue this, until my dying day, that is the most irresponsible way to budget for a municipality. Because it doesn't account for any added expense, it doesn't account for any increase in cost. All it does is simply defer the problem and kick the can down the road for a future council or a future generation to pay for. So what we've tried to do consistently is find that right balance. This year, you know, what we've landed on is 5%. It maintains the level of service that our community has come to expect. It adds a few extra things that our community wants, but it keeps it at a level. You know, what was the annual increase for the average home of 100?
I think they will.
Yeah. And I get it, you know, $12 a month for a lot of people, you know, that adds pressure that they don't own. But again, it's about finding that balance. And not everybody's going to think that we struck the right balance. And I get that. You know, one of the first things I think all of us learned after being elected, you're not going to please everybody. If we reduce the tax increase to 3% and reduce some of the services, we'd have somebody else complaining that, you know, they don't like the service reductions. So again, it's about trying to find a balance. This year we landed on 5%. This is what the seven of us, you know, thought was the right balance, and I appreciate you may not agree with that. But that's where we ended up.
Like I said, in 8 years, it's just shy of 35. And does that mean in another 8 years, I'm looking at a 70-some odd % tax increase?
A lot of that will probably depend on inflation.
I'm honestly not feeling like I'm getting an awful lot more for my money.
I've lived here all my life. I'm a senior citizen and I don't get 5% increases on my pension. I know that, same as you, but at the same time, sitting at this table and realizing that we have a mixed community of young as well as seniors.
I understand. And I know.
And we have to, as the mayor said, provide the services and whatnot. It's a difficult decision sitting there. I mean, for me, I'm like you. I would like to see no increase every year. I've seen increases every year since I bought a house. I started my family years ago, okay? Every year I've seen increases, and it's not only the town. I've seen Impact increase those tax rates on me because we've been lucky living on holiday, but that holiday is gonna end one day, and I'm gonna see a severe tax rate increase when they end it. Okay, so unfortunately, that is life. When I go to the grocery store, I see those same damn increases.
I worked in business all my life. I understand that.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate what you're saying, but at the end of the day, you're right. Maybe in the next 10 years, if I'm still alive, I will see another 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 35% increase as time goes on. There's nothing you can do about it. Same thing at the grocery stores. They're not gonna lower those grocery costs for me either. And if you want the services, then you have to pay for it. Same as you do for the groceries. If you don't want the services, they can be cut back. But again,
But you know what?
that is life, unfortunately.
10 and 15 kilometers a day. I was up this morning, every sidewalk was black ice. I almost felt if you've got a camera across the street, you will see me.
Yeah, I was out this morning too. I saw it.
I walked probably about 8 kilometers this morning, and I was walking right on the edge of the sidewalk. And this was at 9 o'clock. The kids had all went to school, the sun was out, and it was still dark. So.
I was out this morning as well, but I was out a little earlier than you. I was out at 7 o'clock this morning walking.
Why I think, okay, so 5%, and I'm risking my life up here. Last week I felt like, and it went down to talk to them about that. Okay, you know what, I'm just.
All we're gonna get is sand and salt down. We can put it down, but black ice is hard to predict when it will come and when it won't come. It's difficult. And
It's very slippery out there.
I know, I fell last year a couple of times and I can't afford to fall because they're not gonna give me another hit.
Anyway, are we done?
I think we're done. I think everybody wants is sharpen the pencil and just make sure that, you know, you everything's done costs down as much as possible. And sometimes some of those things have to go up.
It's hard.
Because it can't keep going up like that. 70% of your. Yeah. That's a lot.
I mean, one of the questions I ask people sometimes too is, if you don't want to see a tax increase like that, give me a list of services that we're currently providing that you'd be okay with giving up. And the reality is, as human beings, once we have something, we don't want to give them up.
Yeah, and everybody wants certain things.
And that's the other thing, that's before we even look at offering anything new, that's just to maintain what we already have as sort of a baseline.
It's like you heard tonight, they're looking at something that's probably gonna be well over $9 million to $10 million for a community center. I mean, that's been on a wish list of many people, even in the last election when I was going door to door. I don't know where we're gonna get $9 million to build this community center for these people. They don't seem to realize. And then they want a hospital, which is multi-million dollars.
No respect.
Yeah, I'm still here, but we're saying the tax increases that these people don't wanna see and what you request, there's a big gap between that. And we have to be very careful, is what I'm trying to get at, how we balance it. I know you get it, but again, we're not gonna get into that whole discussion at this point.
I'm just here to clarify that passive use parks and recs don't generate any money. It actually costs taxpayers.
And so do.
Both things cost you money. Passive use costs money. Recreation centers where you can rent the you can rent the.
Knock out Torresville Multi Center and Alder Street. They've been
No,
paying
I'm talking about a swimming.
them,
There's no reason to be defensive.
Very rude.
It is, when you say these people, it affects our youth, like, let's face it, most of us are not gonna be here in a few years. We wanna provide an opportunity for youth to develop and become citizens and put back.
I think the point that Councillor Bernardo was trying to illustrate was that, again, as I've said a few times, council is always faced with a balancing act, right? So on one hand, we have a long list of community wants and wishes. On the other hand, we have real concerns of affordability, and we have to try to find that right balance. And at the end of the day, is everybody going to be happy with the decisions we make? Definitely not. And that's fine. That's why we live in the democracy that we live in. And if the community doesn't think the council's striking the right balance, and every 4 years they get an opportunity to toss them out and put a new group of people in. So that's the point I think he was trying to make. As I said earlier, yes, when it comes to big community projects, the only way to do it in this climate, this isn't the 1960s anymore. The only way to do it is through partnerships and through collaboration and through utilizing all levels of government and the private sector and community fund generation. So by all means, we're open to look at those things. But the days of coming to the municipality and saying, we want this, but we don't want to pay for it, that's just not the reality.
That's exactly what we're looking for, partnership.
Yeah,
absolutely. We understand that.
It's not just like people, it's a community, right? A lot of people have concern for these. That's why we're bringing it together.
But like we were trying, like the mayor said, we're trying to balance. We have seniors as well as youth. We're trying to balance the act between the increases that are gonna affect our seniors and the ability to provide what our youth need as well. So there is a very fine balancing act between the two. And you cannot just, the days of the grants where the governments were handing out grants for everything willy-nilly are gone.
Well, and as the CAO said, at the end of the day, there's one taxpayer, whether money's coming from the province, the feds, or the municipality. At the end of the day, it's all coming from the same folks.
Sure. Just to give you maybe another example, another way of looking at something. If we look at things like equipment purchases, okay, we get our RFPs and we get quotes, and we might get a plow that's $20,000-$30,000 cheaper up front. But then because it's maybe manufactured not the same standards we require, we have to put in more money in maintenance. And we have to maybe replace that piece of equipment instead of every 5 years, every 3 years. So in the long term, the decisions we make in terms of maybe spending a little more on quality equipment and quality expenditures and saves us money in the long term, which is why a 10-year plan is maybe a little more prudent than, okay, we can save some money here by, a 3-year plan, right? Say, okay, we'll spend $50,000 here, but we'll put $40,000 into maintenance. I'm just using this as an example, as opposed to spending $100,000 now and having that piece of equipment instead of lasting 3 years, 5 years, last 8, 10, 12. So we're saving money in the back end. So as again, Mayor said, it's a balancing act on everything we do. Doesn't matter if we're buying a snow shovel or we're providing services or we're providing recreation. Okay, so that's
Where I came, where
Yeah.
I lived previously, they would not have ever got leaves the way we do it. They came around with a big machine that sucked them all up, and when it was done, they come up my street and there's, first there's a whole crew of guys that come down and blow all the leaves off the lawns and onto the street, get them all ready. Then there's people coming down with front loaders and it takes forever and it's very labor intensive and so that's perfectly to your point. They would buy a leaf sucker or whatever they call those trucks.
Or stop doing leaf pickup. That just to illustrate again, that's a service that's provided that not every municipality gives. Where you came from, you were lucky enough to have it, but a lot of municipalities don't do that, and you're on your own. So, again, that's something that we do.
And it must be very, like I said, labor intensive and expensive to do it. Same with street cleaning in the spring. Again, same thing. A lot of people out there having to do that work.
Yep.
So you still,
Yes, so
you look at a lot of municipalities do not look after sidewalks.
Yeah, homeowners are on their own to clear the sidewalk in front of their property.
Yeah.
There are several.
If you don't, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's actually a bylaw in all municipalities that you do clean your own sidewalk.
I want my sidewalks still clean, please.
So Cynthia, have we got 3 more questions? Okay.
Okay, I want the service still, and I want my leaf
Mr.
collection.
Shelby, you're a former treasurer. You haven't spoken yet tonight.
I would like to, the ladies might want to stay for what I have to say. Can I think fine? Alan Selby, 340 Long. I've been a municipal treasurer for 35. Now it's person. I want to start with some compliments and then just a few observations. And I'm like Harry, I look at it from very high levels. First of all, I want to say Harry and Marion, another fantastic job as you all well done. As you probably expect, that's perfect stuff. It's very thorough. Probably tell what they want. I wanted to start off commenting on something that hasn't come up, which is ASE, is the automated speed. And I'm so pleased that I want to compliment council for when you reviewed the budget this time last year. Nobody knew Mr. Forbes. You didn't take the temptation to say, oh, look, here's a new revenue source. Let's lower our tax increase down 1% or 0. And get this new money. So do that. You put an estimate in your budget for 25 of ASE revenue. And whatever it was going to put it in reserve. So it had 0 impact on your 2025 bottom line. And now look what the Premier of Ontario's done, and look what a smart decision that is. So I congratulate for doing the right budget. But otherwise, we're really come back like you, because you would have had a revenue in 25, you don't have it. 6.5. So I want to say that was very smart. From the way I read this budget, your costs are really up by about 12 to 13%. And that's not a surprise, because for most municipalities, the things they buy don't go up by consumer price index. Municipalities don't spend well on groceries. They buy concrete, fuel, steel piping, and these kind of things don't go up 0.5%. So just looking at your numbers, I can see they're up by 12 to 15. And the way you've got it covered is got about 2.5, 2.6% covered by taking a portion of your OPP reconciliation amount they received for the year 23. In 25, they didn't fully put it in the 25 budget. You set some of it aside in 26, another smart move. And now they're using it in 26. You're down from about 13 to 10. And then you're also using some of your lease savings, about $500,000 to get you down from 10 to 5, and then the tax increase is 5. And on now senior on fixed income, I would say I have no objection to your decision to go with 5%. I support it. You know, and it's okay. I understand. It could have been 12 or 13 easily if it wasn't for, and this policing savings is something peculiar to show other municipalities don't have this to fall back on. You used it to some extent in 25, you used it to some extent in 26, but then it's not. And you've got a large chunk of it as previous slide, previous slide, got it, see, reserved for unspecified purpose. Just smart. Who knows? This can come down. So as far as the surplus, I was wondering when I started looking at your budget about your 10-year financial plan, how on earth were you going to be bumping up your capital reserves? Budget so tight already. There's no room to do that, but it's important. It's hard to do. So I see you've got all of that's involved here. You've got $150,000 going into capital reserve for the first time related to public works. That's all. It's great. And you've got about $50,000 for the first time going into a new library capital. Or one. Then you've got $100,000 going into parks and recreation, or basically 1% budget. H1.4. And then you've also got a special capital levy of 2% or about $230,000 budget. So how can we do capital reserve increases without raising taxes? And I see what you've done is you bumped up your withdrawal from your rate stabilization like to cover up. So to me, I look at it as like a reserves shell game. You're taking from this rate stabilization reserve to show growth surplus, but you're building a capital reserves because your 10-year plan said you should. And it's good that you're following the plan. So easy to have a plan. And so when I look at your budget documents And even though it's not the responsibility of this council, got columns in there for 27 and 28, 20. And these reserves that I just went through, they in those budgets each year, because that's the idea of protect your capital plan. You start building these reserves now, we keep building. Don't backtrack, don't quit, keep it up. And so I give you kudos.
And just to that point, Alan, I mean, what that allows us to do is if we save as we go for projects that are upcoming, that reduces the amount of money that needs to be raised by taxation or borrowed, in that year. So, we, to your point, yeah, we save the money up knowing full well that over that 10-year plan, these projects are going to come up. And we've already got a good head start in terms of money socked away.
And that takes me back to the pie chart that Gary showed. If I would change that at all, I would say you have the one slice there for tax revenue. And then you had another much larger slice in there for reserves. You can almost put those two together. Because where do reserves come? Right. They came from taxes. So it's really fine. They're both the same thing. So I think that's good. So those were pretty much it for my comments. I know that under the new system, you're adopting this budget, so you're not accept or considering suggested changes, but I'm not. It is just.
It's always nice to get your annual seal of approval anyway.
If you allow for some. Next allows. Into the next budget, 27.
We hope, Alan, we hope they will.
And Alan, when he introduced himself, was a little modest. He said he was a municipal treasurer, but Alan was the treasurer for the county of Dufferin for how many years? 14 years.
But
yes, but locally, that's your claim to fame.
So that's about it. I understand where you're coming from. I can see what you've done to get it down to 5. And that's the reason.
I always wait for you to come. For these 6 years, I've been waiting for you every time you can come.
Hey, Worship, I don't want to carry your nose, but you probably are. Saw something about speaking of grants, something called RSIF, which is Road Safety Initiatives. And it's supposed to be coming out in New Year. And it's a grant program that municipalities can apply to cover the cost of traffic calming measures like such.
They're not giving out big grants. I've been reading up on some of the grants they've given out. The town of Burlington got 600 some odd thousand out of the millions that the province set aside.
They set aside
Got even less than that.
$42 million for 40 municipalities.
That's nothing. That's peanuts.
It's not gonna be us. We
No.
have no shot.
No.
But then there's an additional 160 million coming in for
Everybody else. Yeah.
So I mean, we're among 300.
And
for that. So it's competitive. Turn out.
yeah,
I just wanted to make sure. As far as I got.
Fingers crossed.
my hopes are that we send Mr. Premier Ford the data that we've collected over time with the speeders in this town and with the fact that how much those cameras assisted us in lowering that speed that was coming through town. And the data we're collecting now again after we've taken down the cameras showing, whether that speed is being kept down or whether it's increasing over time. And then
I failed to mention what you actually did collect in the brief time we paid. You're not using that to get this budget.
No.
So, I think that's smart, because it's not on.
It was not supposed to be a revenue.
Yeah, fundamental budgeting. They never pay only one expenses.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Alan.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other budget questions or questions on the budget?
Spoke out, my name is Pam North, I'm at 690 Union Street. Observing. Writing everything. I had one question about where you sent out survey about how individuals can have an input on what services they feel are important.
We did have a service
Was it a survey or?
delivery survey some time ago. I think maybe what you're referencing was my comment when I said people who don't like tax increases. Oftentimes I'll ask them,
Yeah.
just, you know, on the street or the grocery store, where they stop me and say, you know, what the heck are you doing with the 5% increase? To Alan's point, the actual increase for our delivery of services has probably gone up more in the neighborhood of 12%. And that's just to maintain what we provided last year. So if you don't want us to increase taxes, at least to keep pace with the higher cost of service delivery, then my question to people is, what service that you're getting now are you willing to give up? And the answer, you know, always is, well, nothing. You know, I want what I have, I just don't want to pay any more for it. Well, we all do as homeowners, you know, but that's just not the reality.
I think we all, especially people are referring to home, that we all think most of us actually changes within our budget and our homes as well. But what actually, so they have to give.
You have to find a balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Ellen. Is there anybody else out there? But that, yeah.
You're shaking their head.
Okay. All right. So with that, as Carrie said, we do have the bylaw ready to adopt the estimates for the sums required during the year 2026 for general and water sewer purposes for the corporation of town of Shelburne. Councilor Donato, seconded by Councilor Bishardi. All in favor? That's carried. And Carrie, Marion, the rest of your team, thanks again. I know this was mentioned, I think, at the last meeting, but I think consistently, you know, year after year, Shelburne is one of the few municipalities that actually gets our budget done before the end of the calendar year, so that we're actually starting the new year with the budget in place. And I know we appreciate that here, so thank you. Okay, next report is a report from our Director of Legislative Services regarding some procedural bylaw updates. So Jennifer, I'll let you walk us through that one.
Thank you. Through your worship, this report provides an overview of proposed and recommended updates to the council procedure bylaw, which governs how council and committee meetings are called, conducted, and managed. The municipal act requires every municipality to adopt and periodically review its procedure bylaw. Our review occurs once every council term. The draft bylaw incorporates legislative changes into strong mayor powers, includes electronic participation provisions that were created during the pandemic, reflects best practices, improves clarity, and introduces improvements to support efficient, transparent, and accessible meeting management. Appendix 1 to the report contains the full draft bylaw with the proposed additions highlighted in green and any deletions strike through. So I'll highlight the key amendments. New and updated definitions that have been added for advisory committees, electronic meetings, electronic participation, and pecuniary interest. These updates reflect current governance practices and help ensure consistent application of the bylaw. For electronic participation, Bylaws developed during the pandemic have been fully integrated into the draft procedure bylaw. Members can participate electronically in both open and closed sessions. Quorum can be achieved through electronic participation, and clear rules for voting and technology barriers have. Meeting schedule adjustments. So the inaugural council meeting will move to the last Monday in November following this election. The summer break is extended from 4 weeks to 6 weeks, aligned with neighboring municipalities and availability during the conference season. There are some order of business changes. Presentations and deputations have been consolidated under a single presentation category to reduce confusion and streamline the agenda. Public question period has been incorporated into presentation, same registration requirements. A new proclamation section has been added. The maximum number of presentations has been increased from 2 to 3 per meeting. For communication items, correspondence must now include name and address and from Shelburne residents or community members, which supports accountability and ensures correspondence reflects interest. Under strong mayor powers, the draft bylaw has been updated to reflect provincial mayoral legislation, which includes the mayoral veto, override thresholds, and provisions for mayoral proposals. Also included in the report is a transition from question period to town hall information systems. Current question period within council meetings has created procedural challenges with questions and matters outside of council jurisdiction. Staff recommend transition question period from regular meetings and town hall information sessions. We have some surrounding municipalities such as the town of Warrenville who currently host those quarterly. The benefits of hosting a town hall include ability to allow more open and meaningful two-way dialogue and conversation. Town halls can be offered as a hybrid or in-person and live stream to allow for barrier-free access. They provide a venue for focused topics on community engagement, municipal priorities, followed by an open Q&A section. Town halls improves transparency while keeping council meetings focused on legislative decisions. There are minimal costs associated with hosting town hall meetings. These costs can be managed within existing budgets. And I'll refer back to those that are wanting to come to council and address council will have the ability to do so as a presenter as well, in addition to the town hall meetings. So this concludes my high-level overview, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Councilor Reagan.
So, for the most part, I love this. I guess the only thing that I don't like is the removal of the question period. The only reason being, I understand the idea behind it, right? I do, but I guess just because I'm a counselor doesn't mean I'm not a resident, right? And so my thought is, this is our job, and this is why we are elected to be put into these seats, that we are able to be engaged, right? So, I understand that there are certain aspects that get a little crazy sometimes. It's not generally in every meeting situation. So just for me, it allows the community to come. They know they can come twice a month and potentially ask a question, right? Yes, you can ask a question via email, or you can call me or whatever. I try to make myself very much available. I answer everybody who sends me a Facebook message or an email, but it's not always the same as coming to the council and seeing everyone in one setting. I don't know if maybe if we left that in, if there could just be some adjustments to question period where, you can either put a time limit on it, or you could say, we have question period right now, but it does need to pertain directly to the agenda. So if there's something on the agenda that you would like to question, then that's what we're going to address today. But just for me, that's the only part of this I kind of don't like. I am worried, and I understand that they can still come and speak to us, but I am worried about they needing to abide by the procedure to be a presentation. So most of the time when you want to be a presentation, you have to apply for that, 2 weeks in advance or so? And sometimes if the agenda is full, you'll be bumped. right? Which is understandable. Sometimes we have a very full agenda. There's not always, you don't always know the question you might want to bring to council 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So that's just I don't know if I can vote yes to this only because of that. Everything else I love. I love the 2 town hall meetings per year. I think that's a great idea. I think we should have that in addition to question period, right? I love that, you know, potentially increasing the presentations from 2 to 3. You know, maybe not really even see 3 a meeting, but at least there's the option for that. But that's just, as I read through the whole thing, everything else seemed fine. That was just my concern with this. So, yeah.
What I might suggest, I know the draft resolution speaks to bringing the bylaw back for December 8th. Could we maybe push that back one more meeting and just leave this as an agenda item for December 8th to have some further discussion? And then, you know, it'll give all of us sort of a chance to go through those changes now that we've heard your presentation. We can have another discussion about it, make some decisions, and then direct the bylaw back in the following meeting.
May I suggest if you have more time to review, to let me know in advance what your concerns are, so that they can
And that's
be
what I'm
corrected
thinking.
and discussed and prepared for your question.
Okay. That sound good to everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So at this point, why don't we just do a motion to receive the report? Councillor Sample, by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Perfect. Okay.
Just bring that.
Yes.
Yeah, when you receive it.
Good. Are we deferring this then?
Yeah.
Not a deferral.
We received it, so basically it'll come back at our next meeting.
Right. You don't have to defer it.
You can bring it back all the time.
And direct it to December 8th.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I'm just thinking, Tracy, I'll let you make sure that we're.
No, she can bring it back because it's been received, like all reports that have received, they can come back and now.
No. We'll need a deferral on it.
For December 8th.
It's the pro.
Yeah.
Would you like to
Okay.
amend the motion?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. All in favor? Carried. All right. Okay, and the next report is also from Jennifer regarding automated speed enforcement update.
No. Through your worship, tonight's report provides a high-level overview regarding the automated speed enforcement. Warming solar cameras were operational from September 5th to November. The impacts of the province's legislation through Bill 56, which repealed the authority effective November 14th. As a reminder, the program is implemented to improve road safety by reducing speeding and promoting safer driving habits, particularly in areas such as school zones and community safety zones, where vulnerable road users were present. The program captured more than 2.1 million vehicles across 10 cameras in 5 enforcement zones. A total of 57,055 penalty orders were issued, averaging roughly 827 issued penalty orders per day, with 65% of violations occurring on Main Street East and westbound, which continues to be the highest risk corridor. 92.8% of penalty orders that have been issued were to non-residents of Shelburne. Early trends showed meaningful reductions in speeds within the active ANZ zones of 35 kilometers per hour. The high speed recorded was 96 kilometers per hour and 40 kilometers per hour. So, in reality, that would have been instant impoundment of vehicle with fines ranging between $2,000 and $10,000 and ongoing. Under provincial requirements, all AFE revenues must fund traffic safety initiatives. This report recommends utilizing ASC revenues to fund the installation of a PXO or pedestrian crossing at Fort Main Streets. This crossing, once installed, will provide a designated and marked crossing area on this section of road where vehicles must yield to pedestrians. Similar crossing is currently located at Owenstown Street. The repeal of the legislation has resulted in the immediate end of all municipal ASC operations. Cameras were deactivated, signage has been removed, and no further enforcement. Penalty orders issued on November 14th remain valid and continue to be processed. Tickets that remain unpaid will result in late denials being sent to the county. The draft 2026 budget estimates a little over $845,000 of net revenue, subject to further reconciliation that will capture the entire length of the program. Comprehensive financial summary report will be presented to council in Q1 or Q2 of 2026. It will include total revenues collected in program costs, recommendations for alternative traffic calming measures such as speed bumps, raised crosswalks, curb extensions, signage, increased police presence, and expanded use of our current mobile radar. In addition, staff will also be exploring potential funding opportunities to enhance traffic calming measures. Not included in the report, what I wanted to know was the administrative workload created by this project was far beyond our expectations. Staff have managed high call volumes, high mail volumes, and unprecedented amounts of foot traffic into the town hall. If the program had continued, additional staff would have had to be hired to sustain this level of activity. Throughout the duration of the program, staff have experienced a significant amount of aggressive behavior from recipients of penalty orders, of which council has been included in some of those communications. This concludes my report. And have any questions? I'll try my best to answer your questions. Understanding we were still just getting our feet wet, understanding. We've done the best to our ability so far to pull the reports and do the analysis, but there's so much more work to do behind the scenes.
Yeah. Thanks, Jennifer. Sorry.
So we just want to note too, because people were mesmerized, 2.1 billion. The cameras on Owen Sound didn't go active until the 14th.
September 19th, those cameras went out.
So that, there's a disconnect between what you're seeing on Main Street, and you may wonder, well, where did those 200,000 plus cars go? They just leave on 89 going out of town. So we figured that that was the gap. So technically, if we project that, well, the $500,000, let's say, that we're missing was tacked onto there, we would be at 2.6 million cars in those locations. So we're pretty confident that that's where the gap is. So that's mesmerizing.
In that span of 9 weeks, that is the traffic on the connecting link. That is the connecting link that connects you to major highways. Those are still in town road.
And I think that's a key point. One of the complaints that I heard from non-residents who received tickets was that they couldn't believe they were getting a ticket on a highway. Well, sure, it's a connecting link of a provincial highway, but it also happens to be our main street. And there are residents who live on both sides of that main street. And I can think of 3 people that I know personally who have been involved in pedestrian on vehicle collisions on Main Street. So don't tell me that it's a highway and therefore, there shouldn't be speed enforcement. Anybody, including our premier, who says that speed cameras don't work, I think need only look at the numbers in this report. And I would hazard a guess that the experience in other municipalities is much the same. The numbers may change, but I think that the trend lines would very much mirror what our experience has been. The only other thing I'll add, because this has been a bit of a sore point for me for the last few weeks, I think the way that this was handled by the premier was unfair and dangerous, quite frankly, to municipal staff. Let's remember that this was a provincially initiated program. This is a program that the province decided that they wanted to pursue and allow municipalities to use this as a form of speed control. To then change position, which is fine. I mean, people change their minds. But to do it in such a way as to criticize the basis of this and accuse municipalities of being, tax grabbers and greedy and everything else, I think really put our staff primarily in the crosshairs of some angry residents who were feeding off this rhetoric that was used by our premier. And again, he's the premier, he's elected, he's entitled to make up his own mind and change his position. But I think the way it was handled was done irresponsible, and I'll leave it at that.
I was gonna comment that, out of those harassments and whatnot that came into staff, how many of those same people took responsibility for the fact that they were speeding and not just getting a ticket because they were getting a ticket? The majority of the emails I read that were sent by staff to me, none of them, not one, took responsibility for the fact that he was speeding through this town, putting children's lives at risk, putting residents at risk with the fact that he was speeding. When you think about it, someone doing 96 kilometers an hour in a 40 zone has no regards for life or limb at all. And to me, it's unfair for them to turn around and accuse us or staff of being, tax money grabbers or whatever. That's unreasonable. And I agree with the mayor. The premier was irresponsible in the way he commented and the way he put our staff and municipalities in those comments. It, in my mind, just shows lack, how should I put it? Lack of something that a premier should have. You get done with the motion. And I'll leave it up to you because
I just wanted to, again, commend the staff for having to deal with the hostility that was created by comments made by this premier in how this was removed. Shame on him. He owes every municipality in this province an apology for how he put our municipal staffs, not only for this municipality, but for the municipalities around the province in peril. And in a situation where the hostility directed toward them wasn't warranted. Further that, getting back to what you had said, Councillor Bernardo, that 97 kilometer an hour ticket was issued at 7 o'clock on a Friday evening coming into town. So just to give folks perspective on, what the high rollers are and when the high rollers are happening.
And they're going to be happening again, unfortunately.
People that I've spoken to about this, like the fact that it was quieter in their households. Their windows weren't rattling when trucks were coming through town. We don't have a bypass. The calming feature of, just in terms of noise pollution, was appreciated. People were able to make turns, cross streets, back out of their driveways with a little more time and ease. People weren't driving as aggressively. So it in fact was, an experiment in traffic calming that went right, that the premier then decided to, for political purposes, remove. And remember, since 2022, this province collected approximately 30% of every ticket that went right back into provincial coffers through victim services fees and plate lookups fees. So to absolve themselves of saying, hey, it's not a tax grab for us, but then turn around and say that the municipalities are the villains is unethical. And I take I don't step back from those comments.
the funny thing I found in that report is it wasn't, we always thought it was our residents that were the high speeders. It wasn't our residents that were the high speeders, it was the out of town people that were the high speeders. So that tells us something at least.
To the tune of almost 93%.
Yeah, that tells us something at least that we can now go back to our residents and say, thank you very much, you are not the cause of the problem is from out of town.
I think the only win here is that we're gonna get another crosswalk paid for by this program.
Well, we're gonna get more than
That isn't impacted by upon the taxpayers. And the downside of this is that any future traffic calming strategies that we have to be implementing, keep our community safe, will be visited upon. It's not the whole, not just the speeders.
And I think that's the irony of the Premier's tax breath comment, and Councillor Wagner and I talked about this. So we're moving from a system where those who violate the law are penalized through a ticket, which is nothing new. I mean, that's the system we're all used to a system where the Premier is promising to provide funding for other forms of traffic calming, whether it's speed bumps or what have you. And those are going to be funded out of the tax base.
Yeah.
So rather than only the violator paying, now we're all paying.
Yeah.
So where's the real tax grant?
Yeah.
Right there.
I just wanted to echo some of the comments that my colleague took from, and to some of the comments from members of council, that one of the things your motion in the past has specifically requested, disclosure has not yet been provided, is exactly how much money this program was initiated on the 825 late fee, which is an administrative access fee for us, as well as the 25% surcharge. What is that amounted to? And it might be in the multi-millions, like 30 million, 40 million. And that is important information that I think still needs to be recognized and reconciled. Additionally, with respect to the report that will be forthcoming, I'll mention it now, because the tools that are available to us, many of them are seasonal. So the bollards are seasonal. We have used speed bumps seasonally. So we need to now fully vet the application of speed bumps or humps, as some of them are called, in a year-round application. There are municipalities on the Kingston corridor, for example, with the similar levels of snow that we have, or even worse, that have them year-round. What that means, and I think somebody had joked, that we'll be slowing you down to 30. So what is critical now is reconciling the fact with the data that we have, and we're going to continue to collect, that those corridors within the connecting lane will be critical corridors for speed bumps to be valuable. And because there is collaboration in return for those corridors, we will have to ensure that we have the support of MTO in connecting that, because we'll also have to map out for you with the budget available to us, as you asked in the past, that if I redirect you here by physical impediment, what we don't want you is to be here. So what we'll have to look at is the logistics of the mind and the driver, and going, okay, you stop me here, I'll go here, but we'll make sure if we stop you here, we're gonna stop you here. So it will be a quagmire of traffic calming that will be meaningful. And we'll utilize the budget available to us for that purpose, as well as look at what Jennifer has for the safety of the crossing guard and the safety of the children they're protecting, how we are going to position those further as well. So, probably those that resisted a ticket because it was a reality check that they were speeding and excessively speeding, this will be another reality. But council will need to, when we vet this, council will need to approve every single speed bump location to ensure that the community and the residents on those corridors are also aware of that, because not all welcome them. But if they welcome the adjustment in speeding, which is going to protect them and their family, I'm sure they will embrace that, as long as it's not something that it's going to be such a detriment to them getting in a driveway. But there'll be a lot of them, we promise you, in terms of what will be recommended.
I told you, one every kilometer or less. That's one every 300 feet.
There you go, Austin.
There we go.
Completely full.
Yeah.
And it's just.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
And just a side note on the whole issue, speed enforcement through the technologies that we were allowed to use for a very short period of time. I recently went to Montreal, Quebec City, and in through there, and their versions of their 401, their multi-lane highways, where it is a 100 kilometer an hour zone, is speed enforced with photo radar cameras. So
Some of the highways are actually 70.
Yeah.
Shocked. On the weekend, I was like, oh, it's only 70, slow down.
along 40, Highway 40, Highway 20, I think are the two big ones, but I mean, you know, you're driving. Anyway,
Okay,
I digress.
so I need a motion to receive the report, to authorize the cost of the new PXO crossing at Gordon Street in Maine in the amount of $57,703.08 plus HST to be funded from the ASC program revenues, and that the remainder of the town's portion of recognized revenue collected from ASC be placed in a reserve at year end till such time as a collective financial report in conjunction with staff recommendations can be presented to council on utilization of the funds in accordance with the legislation. By Councillor Sample, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. Do we need a motion to sit past, Jennifer?
9:30.
9:30, okay. Couldn't remember the time.
Can we know as well, like when the cameras are actually come down?
Physically come down.
Yeah.
Three Worship, PSC has been in contact with us today. They're trying to organize that now. It looks like it'll be next week at some point. So.
No, I know they're not active. I just,
Yeah.
I've had some people,
Physically there.
yeah, they're like, why are they still there? And I'm like, well, I'm assuming because the company that owns them
They're
has
taking them
multiple,
down.
yeah, that they have taken down everywhere and we're not necessarily high on their,
They'll be a
List.
little busy.
so it's when they can get here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Had that conversation as well, yeah, so.
All right, any notices of motion for this evening? Okay, on to communications. Anything there, Councillor Pichardi?
Number 2, which is the, open it up here, Mulmer's opposition to the proposed strata quarry. Some of the things they talk about, the impact on traffic volume. Gee, didn't have that conversation not 2 seconds ago. Negative impact on groundwater surfaces, concerns over water quality. We have, wells that are on or near Melanchthon, and concerns with long-term impacts and noise impacts, air quality, and third-party review of hydrology study. So I guess I want to, support that. We've already done that on our own as a town. Kudos to them for also, along with all the other municipalities that are stepping up and doing this.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that all lower tier municipalities in Dufferin seem to be firmly on the same page when it comes to this issue, and that's not always the case. But on this one, yeah, I mean, everybody agrees that this current proposal is problematic for a number of reasons.
Can I just dovetail number 5 into this conversation, because I think it's relevant on one of the last pages of the OPP report from 2024. 21% of fatal collisions involved a commercial vehicle. Personal injury collisions, 11% that involved a commercial vehicle. And if this strata pit goes through, guess we're gonna have 60 to 100 more commercial vehicles on our roadways. Yep. So they do tie in with each other.
Good correlation.
You gotta take a look at the big picture. Al mentions, I won't mention province being a little short-sighted and PSC, but oh, wait a minute, let's drag that in this one.
All right, Anything else in communications? Okay, can I have a motion then to receive those items as information? By Councillor Fegan, seconded by Councillor Bernardo. Favor? Motion for the confirming bylaw. Sample and Wagner. All in favor? Barry?
I'll take them. Sorry.
Shardy with an eager motion to adjourn.
At least I'm not.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Seconded almost equally as eagerly by Donato. All in favor?